Hi there, I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com, and this is my Smart American Accent training. Welcome to our Saturday live question and answer class. In these classes, I take your questions regarding American English pronunciation and American accent, and we always have a topic at the beginning that we discuss. It's usually a request from a viewer from a previous week or from a comment. But what I like to try to do is teach you something, give you something to think about, and then you can ask questions about that topic or any topic that you like. Please feel free to put your questions in the chat at any time. We're starting a little early today, so if you're joining us later on, feel free to ask your questions in the chat or as a comment, and I'll turn to those in a few moments. At the start today, I'd like to talk about what I like to call real talk. This is something, a teaching tool that I like to look at for how we use linking and reduced sounds to be fluent as native speakers. So as we're speaking, the way our words sound is different than the written words. If I were to say written words word by word as I read them, they are quite different than how you notice connected speech. So usually when you're a more advanced speaker, you're naturally doing some of these things already, and some you may not be aware of, and it can be helpful to point them out and see them visually. If you're a newer speaker to English, this is one of the reasons why it can be so challenging to understand, to speak fluently, and to transition from reading and writing in English to listening and speaking in English. So this can be helpful for you regardless of what your English level is. So let's take an example. We're going to look at the sentence, "It is not for you." Now you can hear if I say it that way, "It is not for you." It doesn't sound natural or fluent. That's not how I would say that if I were speaking naturally in real life. So in real talk, "it is not for you" sounds like "it isn't for you." How do we get from these 5 words to this "it isn't for you"? It's so different than what we see here written. Let's break it down. First of all, we typically do not say "it is not." Instead, we say "it isn't." So "is not" contracts to the word "isn't." You may not feel comfortable using isn't, doesn't, wouldn't, etc., these types of contractions, but it's not casual speech, it's not slang. Using contractions is how native speakers always speak, pretty much 90%, 99% of the time. And this is just because it's a way to be more fluent as we're speaking. And I think oftentimes when we're taught the grammar of English, we learn "it is not" and what it means, and we might not be as comfortable with something like "it isn't." Secondly, even if you're comfortable with it, you may see this written "isn't" and not know how to say it or how to pronounce it or feel comfortable pronouncing it. So I like to rewrite "it isn't" as "it isn't." What's happening here is that my T from "it" and my I from "isn't" are linking together, and that means that this T on "it" becomes more of a flap T. So I'm not doing a strong D, not it isn't, but it isn't. That flap T is the same sound I use in a word like water or better, when the T is followed by a vowel sound, or if I'm saying, for example, just "it is," it's not "it is," that T gets lost and it becomes a flap T, "it is." And so I often write that with 2 T's or a D because that's how we also flap the D in the middle of words. So "it isn't," "it is not" becomes "it isn't," "it isn't." The stress in this little phrase, "it isn't," is on the dis syllable, "it isn't." Then you'll see that I've put the T here in parentheses. That's because when a word ends with T for the end of "isn't," I'm not saying "it isn't" with a strong aspirated T. We save that aspirated T for T at the start of words. When the T ends a word, we say the T, how we say the T depends on what comes next. So if I say it is, I already let you know that the T, when it links to a vowel, becomes a flap sound. And so it is sounds like it is as it links. When the next sound after the T is a consonant sound, as in it isn't for you, it isn't for you, we do what's called a stopped or unreleased T, where you're not going to hear that T because it would break up the flow of my sentence. If I put the T in there, it isn't for you, it isn't for you, that T interrupts the flow. So instead, it isn't, I'm going to make the T by lifting my tongue for that T, and then I don't release it. I just release into the F of for. It isn't for you. It isn't for. It isn't for. So in order to be able to make that, another thing that happens here is that my N sound is going to be very short. If I hold that N a long time, it isn't for you. It isn't for you. It's going to sound like I'm just dropping the T. Whereas if I say it isn't for you, it isn't for you, I'm unreleasing that T, my N is short, and then I hear that, we perceive that T sound as a listener. It isn't for you. Next, for the word for, when I'm talking about the number 4, then I use the true or sound. But in the word for, F-O-R, if it's not the stressed word in the sentence, which it usually isn't, it gets reduced and the or becomes more of an sound. So rather than it isn't for you, you can hear how that slows me down. It isn't for you. It isn't for you. This is because in this phrase, it isn't for you, the you is the stressed word. It isn't for you. Or we might also stress isn't. It isn't for you. That's the verb, so it's also important. But for is not stressed here. You can hear how if I change and I use the full word for, it'll change how the sentence sounds. It isn't for you. That's stressing on that for, it's making it too clear. I can use that in some cases, but more typically, I'm going to have that for become a fur. It isn't for you. So even in a very, very simple 5-word sentence, there's a lot of changes that we make to the pronunciation compared to if I'm saying each of these words. It's part of fluent speech, it's natural, and even though this looks quite different from this, if you start to listen to American speakers as they're speaking, you'll hear that they always do these types of reductions, linking, contracting, as they're speaking naturally and fluently. If you find this to be helpful, you may also really enjoy our Real Talk course on speechmodification.com. In that course, I teach you about these linking and reductions that we do, and I also show you how to use American TV and movies and commercials to listen for real talk, to see it visually like this, and to begin to adopt that into your speech. How to apply this to sound more fluent and natural as you're speaking. We also have quite a few Real Talk videos here on the channel. You can check those out in our Real Talk playlist. Okay, thanks. Nice to see so many of you here. Welcome, everyone. Do feel free to put your questions in the chat at any point. If you're joining us a little later or watching this not live, you can also always leave a question in the comments. I go through all of the comments on the videos, add your words to my list to cover in a future word of the day or in a future live class like this. Okay. We have a question about the word entrepreneurship and entrepreneur. I do have a video for this, so after class, if I have time, I'll come back and give you a link for that. You can always also search on the channel or leave me a comment and I'll give you those videos directly. But for entrepreneurship and entrepreneur, we have a couple of different options. So both of them, they're always stressed on the first syllable, on. So letters en typically in English wouldn't say on, but this comes from the French. So we have the ah vowel, the stress there, entrepreneurship. Sounds like on, like the word on on, but I'm writing it here with, I'll write it here with actually an ah because that looks like the word and, that would be the black cat vowel. But we have ah, the not hot vowel here. Entrepreneur. Actually, the stress is on ner. This is a secondary stress here on that first syllable. So it is a clear vowel, but the main stress is on the ner syllable, entrepreneurship. You will also hear entrepreneurship with an ur vowel sometimes. I think it's easier to use the ner, entrepreneur, but you will hear sometimes people saying entrepreneur, newer. So that would look like an ur vowel here. So entrepreneur, entrepreneurship. Yeah, definitely a challenging word because it's not really exactly the same as the French, but doesn't follow the typical spelling patterns and rules for pronunciation for English because it does come in from the French. Thank you. Very good. Okay, we have a question about whether, or just a statement, it's almost impossible to get rid of a slight accent. Yes, definitely challenging when you're very close to speaking like a native speaker. Some of those things in the real talk are really what's different for those with slight accents. If you're not making big pronunciation differences anymore, it might be things like saying where you're saying it is not instead of it isn't. And also that you might be saying it isn't instead of it isn't. You might be saying go to the place rather than go to the place. So learning how we link and change is one of those last details that happens when you have a slight accent. I don't think there's anything wrong with having an accent. In fact, many people enjoy listening to accents, but sometimes people tell me how frustrating it is to be working so hard to have an American accent, to speak like a native speaker, and still they get asked, where are you from? Or they still notice an impact of having that accent. So I think it's always nice to have information about how to change. Unfortunately, we're very good at listening to very slight differences in accent, and people pick up on that. Even though they couldn't tell you what you're doing differently, they can still hear accents. So it can be a struggle to lose an accent entirely. It's not impossible, but there are a lot of details like that you need to know about if you're trying to change. Generally speaking, I think being clear and being well understood is the most important piece, and that's what we focus on this channel, but I also just try to support you at whatever level you're hoping for in your accent journey. So thank you for your comment. I have a question about whether when for is at the beginning at the sentence, do we still reduce it? For everyone coming. So I can. It depends on the sentence and how it's stressed. So for example, for everyone coming to the party, I could still there say for everyone coming. If I say for everyone coming to the party, I can use the true for really at the beginning or anywhere, and it's not always going to slow me down. But for instance, if I'm saying at the beginning, I may still say for instance. You're right. It's the more likely we are to reduce it, it's when it's often later in the sentence. But if I'm saying for the time being, you can hear I'm not saying for the time being. So it really does depend on the context. A lot of the time, a good percentage of the time, it becomes for, even if it's at the start of the sentence. Thank you. That's a good follow-up question. I appreciate it. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here, Milena, one of our channel members. She's asking about the word versatile. So I'm saying it one way, but versatile can also be pronounced versatile. So two different ways here. First, in either case, it's stressed on the first syllable ver. So we'll have the ver. So it either has secondary stress on, and it sounds like versatile. Versatile. Or like tile, like the word tile. Or I think maybe more common, we tend to reduce that last syllable, and it sounds more like versatile. So If I'm using secondary stress, versatile, then I drew a true T here and I do the I diphthong, versatile. If I'm saying it's very versatile, then my T becomes a flap and it sounds more like a D, and I lose this vowel. It's either going to be a little schwa, like an or I'll just go right from the flap to the L, versatile. Like in a word like syllable or little, where we go right from the flap T to the syllabic L, versatile. So you'll hear both pronunciations and both are correct. Yeah, that's a great word. Thank you. I'm not sure if I have a video for that yet. If I do, I'll point it out to you and you can check it out in more detail on the channel. Milena is, I hope I'm saying your name correctly, is one of our channel members. Now I've been able to start gifting some channel memberships. So if you are interested in becoming a channel member and receiving that as a free gift for a month, you can click on the join button, or you can also check out on the channel. You just need to click to allow gifts. So if you go to our community page, I did detail that recently about how to be eligible to receive a gift of a channel membership. And of course, you can always join the channel on your own by clicking the join button, making a small contribution, and then you'll have access to some of our member perks, which include extra classes for members, some additional playlists, and access to our online courses. So check that out if you're interested, and welcome to our new channel members. Okay, we have a question about whether these can sound the same. I said it, and I said it. So yes, they can sound very similar because both set and said have the same F vowel. So even though this looks like said, because it follows that typical pattern for like rain or made, the IPA, it's an F vowel. So we could rewrite it with the D sound. The only difference between these two in I said it is that we may hold this vowel a little bit longer. So the T does flap. I said it. I said it. Because we're connecting that final T to our vowel sound. I said it. I set it down, and I said it. As I said, the only small difference is that because this T is voiceless, this S sound is going to be fairly short. I said it. And here, I said it. I might hold the S slightly longer, but it does still have that same sounds. I said it. So often context will have to tell us which one is which. That length of that vowel is it's a very subtle difference, and they can sound exactly the same. Thank you. That's a good question. Okay. We have a question about E at the beginnings of words like enjoy versus emergency. Okay, so in enjoy, joy is stressed, and so my letters EN, they can either sound like an sound, enjoy, sorry, wrong IPA. It's a j sound that we spell with letter J, but the symbol is this, enjoy. Or it might be more of an I sound like it, enjoy. So I think about this as we're going to enjoy it. This first vowel is going to be reduced. So I do think I say more of an enjoy, but it can also be an I sound. The most important thing is that joy has the clear vowel. Enjoy. It's almost like there's not much vowel here at all. It's almost like we're just saying that N sound, enjoy. I hope you enjoy it. Hope you enjoy it. So the vowel is very reduced. And usually in a reduced vowel in the first syllable, we will see the IPA as an I sound. You could probably use a little reduced vowel here as well. And then in emergency, again, in the IPA, you're going to see that the stress falls on the mer syllable, emergency. And so that first letter E, again, is going to be the I sound, emergency. I think when people see that word and say it by themselves, by itself, they might say like emergency. It's an emergency. But in actual speech, this is again where if I just say emergency by itself, I can use the I sound. In a sentence, I would never use that E. I wouldn't say it's an emergency. It's an emergency. I'm going to have that reduced I sound instead. Again, by itself, emergency. If I have a little bit of a clear E there for just the word, that can happen. More likely, though, in real speech, in the real pronunciation, you're going to have that reduced I sound because the mer syllable is what's stressed. Yeah, great question. I do have some videos talking about those reduced vowels, and you can also check out our Sounds of English course on speechmodification.com, where we look at all the letters and sounds and how to build a strong foundation to pronounce words and understand that sound system, what letter E will do, and also what the I sound is and the E sound, etc. So that's our Sounds of English course on the website speechmodification.com. Thank you. That was a great question. Okay, we have a question about the word bureau. So for bureau, this is a tough one to spell as well. And I think there are a couple of different regional pronunciations. The way I pronounce it is bureau. First syllable stress, and the BU has a hidden y sound. So it kind of sounds like bure. So I would build that from and then add your y sound. Your, bure, bure. And then this is just O in English, our O diphthong. You will sometimes hear people use, again, a little more of an oo, like we talked about in entrepreneur or entrepreneur. You may also hear a little bit of like bureau, a little bit more bureau. So bureau or bureau. I believe I have a video for bureau as well, but definitely a challenging word. So thanks for bringing that up today. Okay, we have a question about the word found. So this rhymes with words like pound and round. Our vowel is ow, which you'll see in the dictionary as is the diphthong ow. We do write that as OW in words like cow or brown, so it might help you to think of OW here. But I would probably just write it as found, ow. So thinking about ow, found. You could also write found. But OW also sometimes makes people think of the O diphthong rather than the ow diphthong. Found, I found it. Very good, thank you. Okay, we have a question about how to glide from TH to L in words like triathlon and bi-monthly. So let's look at bi-monthly. Bi-monthly. So bi-monthly. So basically, if I'm trying to move from the TH to the L, one thing is you can do is cheat a little bit on both your TH and your L, because TH, the tongue is between the teeth, and the tongue lifts behind the teeth. Flee. So you can either pull the tongue back and move to that L position, or I could say by monthly, and I leave my tongue between my teeth, and I just close for the L a little further back on my tongue. So I don't have to make two movements. I can do flee. I kind of co-articulate those two, where my TH might not be quite as far out, and my L is not as crisply made with the tip of the tongue, but rather more further back the blade of the tongue. By monthly. Same thing with triathlon, flan. Just try saying those two together, flan, without having, what you don't want is triathlon, where a little schwa sneaks in between your TH and your L. You You can also check out, I have a video for linking TH. I'm not sure if I talk about TH and L in there, but I talk about how to go from like an N to a TH or a TH to a Z when we're linking between words, because TH, of course, it's a challenging sound, and when we work on it by itself, like month, we're able to get that TH. Then when we have to move it smoothly within words or between words, the linking back and forth to TH is more challenging than just saying the TH sound. I hope that helps you with those words. That's definitely a good point, and I'm sorry if I didn't cover it as well as I could have in the triathlon video, but hopefully that helped you to be able to hear me talk about it in this class. Okay, thank you so much. We have a question about, you had a first question before that, Anuat. Let me see if I can go back and find it. Oh yes, I guess I didn't see your first question. So you're asking about endurance versus insurance. If I miss one of your questions, but I've already answered one, I may not get to everybody's second and third questions. This was your first question and I missed that. So for endurance, you have to make sure that you're closing for the D and making a strong stop sound, endurance. So it still will have a little bit of an I sound like insurance. And insurance, your S sound is the SH sound. So insurance, what you want is to make sure that when you're doing endurance, your tongue goes behind your teeth and drops. Endurance, insurance, insurance. So if your endurance is sounding like insurance, start just by saying dur, and then durance, and then add your in back. Durance, endurance, so that you feel that D happening and it doesn't slide into more of a sh continuing sound. The SH sound can continue and the D sound just is a stopped sound. You can make it and it bursts out and that's it. You shouldn't hear it any longer. Okay, yeah, very similar words though. Thank you. That's a good question. Okay. We have a question about, let's see, scanning through and reading your other questions. So the word literally, I do have a video for this as well, is a good example of, again, the flap T, where our T is going to sound more like a D. It's a flap sound, which means I'm not doing a strong D. I'm not building up air and releasing it, not literally, but literally. My tongue goes up to that spot for the T and D, but it doesn't build up any air pressure and it comes right back down. Sometimes when I rewrite it this way, that can help people because it's how we would say the word litter. It's how we would say a word with two D's in the middle, like middle. And we have first syllable stress. So literally. Yeah, and then this final A is going to be our schwa sound, literally. And our first I sound, just watch out that it's an I like lid or lit, and not an E like lead. Very good. Thank you. Okay. We have a question about the word colonel. So the colonel, as in the military rank colonel, is the same as kernel, like a kernel of corn. There's really no logical explanation for this. The way this is spelled doesn't make any sense. So it's really helpful to visualize it as kernel. Also, kernel, I think it might be kernel of corn. Kernel? I don't know. At any rate, the ker is stressed, and I have a syllabic L in the final syllable, so I'm going right from the n to the ul sound. There's no sound here for this letter E. Kernel. Same as a word like internal or diurnal. We have that ernal, journal, etc. That same combination of an n, and syllabic n. Kernel. Yeah. very strange pronunciation and spelling of that word. I do have a video for the word colonel and also for other military ranks. So if you're interested in that, you can do a search on the channel, or you can leave me a comment and I'll send you the link for that particular video. Great. We have another question about the words, the phrase "I have to do it." So I have to do it becomes more of I have to do it. Because do is stressed, my to gets reduced to more of a schwa, I have to. We lose that V and it becomes more of a f sound, have to do it. And then you're asking about whether or not the D, I had to do it. You're asking about if in I had to do it, whether that D can become a T sound. I had to do it, had to. No, I would say we keep that D. I had to do it. I had to do it. Had to do it. I had to do it. What you'll hear there is that if I don't keep that D, or if I don't keep that vowel long, I had to do it, it's going to sound like I had to do it, had to do it. Yeah, okay. So because I'm linking these, it could be a little bit like a T, I had to do it. You're not going to hear had to. You're not going to hear a strong released D. These link together, and I have a stopped D here. But what I don't do is shorten it up too much. So if I did had to do it, it's going to sound wrong. You need to have your vowel long enough to be able to perceive that as a D rather than a T. Had to do it. I had to do it. Okay, thank you for that question. That all relates to how we make unreleased T's and D's, how we link them, and I do have several videos for that, as well as information about that in my online courses if you're interested in getting a little bit more detail there. Okay, wonderful class today. It's so nice to see so many of you here, and I look forward to seeing you in our upcoming Word of the Day classes, which we have each day here on the channel, as well as on Saturdays in our future Saturday classes. I'll be here again next week at the same time to take your questions, and in between, or if you're watching this as a replay, you can always leave questions in the comments and I can get back to you with videos or resources here on the channel to help answer them. Thanks so much for being a part of the class today, for supporting the channel, for subscribing, joining. Your comments, your likes all really help the channel to grow, and I truly appreciate your support. It was a wonderful class and nice to see everyone today. I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com. Remember, if you want to sound like a native speaker, you can do it. speechmodification.com. Bye, everyone. Thanks for a great class today.